I'm Simon, and this is
Phil.
sometimes known as Shaolin Phil, and I'm sometimes known as Simon the Cut. We wanted to talk about the origins of Portsmouth and how Portsmouth was founded.
No one knows when Portsmouth, this lovely city we are sitting in, no one knows when it truly came into being. There are many conflicting facts which have appeared through uncertain means, many people trying to claim the Pompey title for themselves. But I've worked hard and I've strove to sift through this data, compiling and assembling it into a possibly accurate but probably mostly erroneous timeline, which begins way back in the mists of time. Okay, before we begin this, I just want to get into the origins of the whole world a bit more, because you know Portsmouth, right?
Yes, sorry, I nearly fell asleep then. Sorry,
we've got a long way to go, yeah.
We're losing listeners by the second.
But you know, Portsmouth is a small part of the world.
It is, certainly.
The world at large.
I'll give you that.
The whole world at large needs to be examined, don't you think?
Maybe.
Because back in the beginning, you might know, but these big creatures were walking about. They went rare, and they were believed to rule this planet, and if you believe the stories. But what happened to them? What happened to these dinosaurs?
What did happen to them?
Well, some people say a big meteor came down and killed them all. And then humans came afterwards. I think the saber-toothed tiger was still about, but mostly the dinosaur creatures are gone. And these humans squelched their way onto the shore and slowly morphed from mollusks to monkeys, gradually becoming the humanoid creatures we are.
I'm not sure that's accurate, but we'll go on.
Okay, well, bear with me. At some point, an age of ice arrived. This would have killed off the dinosaurs if the meteor didn't. If they survived their space stoning. But humans, the ice age didn't faze them because they had better brains, I guess, and they knew how to make clothes and shelters. The clothes they wore weren't exactly Versace, but they had twigs and leaves and animal skins stitched together.
And they liked a bit of procreation as well, didn't they, to perpetuate the species?
And to keep the cold out of the knackers, that was another way. Anyway, finally the ice age passed, greenness returned, even to the chilly country later known as England, and the humans emerged into this lush land. Life back then in those times in the lovely country of Great Britain was mostly feudal. People squabbled in the dirt and muck, and leaders emerged to try and have some sense of control, usually against the majority of the people's best interests. Some would say not much has changed today. And I think that's enough to set up the first important point in history, which sort of mentions this land we are currently in, the south coast of England.
Well, actually, lots of dinosaur bones have been found on the coast of the Isle of Wight, which is just off of Portsmouth.
That's true. So even the dinosaurs were everywhere, weren't they? Not
That's
just
right.
in like Africa and places.
Well, it was one continent then, wasn't it? Japan and
That's true,
Japan.
yeah, because it was one big landmass and it split. That's what they say. But during those unorganised days, when the humans were around, there were a rather large group of lads living in a distant land that decided they wanted to take over the world. And they get a much better dress sense than the Brits, and they wore big shiny helmets.
Who was this then?
With feathers in them. They looked a bit fetching by all accounts. They called themselves Romans.
Ah, yes, right. We know the Romans, don't we?
After their home capital of Rome, actually, if you didn't know that. And a country called Italy. I don't even know if it was called Italy then. But anyway, these guys, they were like a bit more advanced than the Britons, because the Britons at the time, their favourite pastime was muck flinging. And the Romans went on a rampage across the globe. They set their sights on England's green pastures and its vastly uncouth inhabitants. The leader of the Romans...
Nothing much has changed.
Yeah, exactly. The leader of the Romans at this time was a mush called Claudius, And in AD 43, he sent one Aulus Plautius over with a fleet to annex the Britons and occupy their land. Well, the Britons obviously stood no chance against this invasion. They didn't even know how to comb their hair properly, let alone defend against swords and spears. So they got conquered, along with everywhere else, pretty much. The Romans took over most of the world, and within the next few years, the Romans took over England, and they'd overrun all the South and Midlands, which they ruled over for the next few hundred years. And people were a bit cross with their new rulers, but actually, apart from being a bit strict and inventing many annoying rules, they did a lot of good. What did the Romans do for us?
Well, that's a very good question. They always say aqueducts. Was it aqueducts and underfloor heating, wasn't it? With water, they had some kind of hot water heating underfloor.
With their
the Roman baths.
Yeah, and roads. And it was all mud tracks.
And a lot of the towns and cities in England were founded as spa towns. With Bath is obviously the most famous one.
But one thing they did in relevance to Portsmouth is around England they obviously erected fortifications, and one such fort was placed in a good position which overlooked what would one day be known as Portsmouth Harbour. And but it wasn't just the Romans that wanted a bit of Britain. Raids were carried out frequently by Saxons, Picts and the Scots of Ireland. You heard of them? I haven't. Throughout the 4th century, but these increased in the years after 383 AD. The Romans held fast to their occupied lands, however. With their advanced military might, they could repel even the most brutal of bloodthirsty barbarians, hiking through the hills and floating over the oceans. But eventually, a reckoning came to even the previously indomitable and smartly dressed Roman soldiers. There arose a more fearsome foe, the Visigoths.
Oh, Visigoths, yes.
Did you know anything about them?
Yes, well, I mean, that's where we get Goths from, isn't it?
Today's
young
Goths.
People go through this wonderful phase where they like to dress up.
Yeah, and have their hair that hangs down one side.
Black makeup and everything, yeah.
And black
comes from the
nails.
Visigoths, yeah.
Oh, that's well.
It's still around today.
Well, these guys are scary. Even the Romans, in their armour, quaked in their boots when they saw these guys. And the Visigoths actually invaded Italy, so the Romans were like, "Shit, lads, we got to bring all our troops back to defend." So they pulled everyone out of England and the rest of the world, and because the Romans were losing to these horrific individuals, England they left the mere skeleton crew in charge. So this is the perfect advantage for the Germanic Saxons. They saw that the Romans had left England pretty much unguarded, so they struck. They struck before but failed. This time, at the beginning of the 5th century, Britain ceased to be a Roman province as the last of the Romans were wiped out or fled. The Britons, though, they also seized this advantage and grouped together and began to defend their land from the Saxons, taking a leaf out of the departed Romans' book and being a bit more organised this time. So, in 501, there's an often retold story from the Anglo-Saxon times that a Saxon called Port and his 2 sons came into Britain upon 2 ships. Yes, in a place somewhere down south known as Portes Mutha. Upon landing, they apparently slew on the spot a young Briton of very high standing. Port then decided that he was the boss, and he declared this land as Portsmouth.
And interestingly, Winston Churchill, who was a great writer as well as statesman, he wrote a book called A History of the English-Speaking Peoples.
Right.
And in that book, he writes that Port was a pirate who founded Portsmouth in 501.
Yes.
And this is the warrior, the Anglo-Saxon. Well, was he Anglo-Saxon?
Yeah, Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah, so he was a warrior, and his 2 sons killed this noble Briton.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
But he says this was in 501.
Yeah, I said 501. It is 501.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
This was 501. But the trouble is, all this story came from the Anglo-Saxon times, and I personally believe that the Anglo-Saxon Times was the Daily Mail of its time. So a lot of this story is, a lot of people say it's false. This Port guy, he might have existed, but I think I think it's mere fallacy. I don't think that Portsmouth was around at this point. And even worse, Winston Churchill read this rag, the Anglo-Saxon Times, maybe, if it was still around then.
So, yes, we don't really know, do we? It was a very long time ago, of course.
Well, let's move on.
So what about this fella, Jean de Guizos? Have you heard of him?
Yes, I'll get to him, actually.
Oh, good.
But let's go back to the end of the 8th century first, because at this time, the Britons were mostly in control, but then we had the Vikings, the tyrants known also as the Northmen, the Danes, began to ravage the coast of England. The southern coasts were particularly vulnerable to invasion, and in 787 Britain was conquered by the Danish pirates. In 838, during the reign of Ethelwulf, the King of Wessex, the Danes landed somewhere between what is now Portsmouth and Southampton, pillaging, burning and plundering as was their hobby. The king had quite enough of this, and he assembled an army and managed to drive off the Danes at great cost to his troops, who mostly won by a bit of the old stiff upper lip.
Were they Vikings then?
The Vikings, yeah. The Vikings were vicious.
This is fascinating because the same thing was happening in Ireland as well. So there was a king, an Irish king called Brian Boru, and he was the one who rallied the local clans together and united them against the vicious marauders, the Vikings, and basically threw them out of the country.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I am, although it's only hearsay, I'm supposed to be descended from this fellow, Brian Boru.
Wow.
It's my little bit of pub trivia there.
Wow. A great ancestor.
Great.
But after the first king of Wessex, called Ethelwulf, kicked out the Vikings, the next king came along, Alfred, but he went one further. He built a fleet to face off head-on these chicken head-biting Vikings who were quite bloody scary, to say the least. Nevertheless, the Britons once again stood up to them and defeated the invaders in a battle in 897 AD. Alfred, it is said by some, played a crucial role in the early history of Portsmouth also. Although there are no records of him directly founding Portsmouth, he is associated with its early development. Alfred is known for his efforts to defend England against Viking invasions, particularly through naval power. He is credited with creating the first form of the English Navy, which laid the groundwork for Portsmouth's future as a key naval base. During his reign, Alfred established a series of coastal defences known as burhs to protect against Viking raids. Some historians suggest that Portsmouth, due to its strategic location, may have been an important part of this network. This early focus on maritime defence and shipbuilding contributed to the city's later rise as a major naval port during the medieval period.
And I think it's also Portsdown Hill that was maybe seen as part of the defence of
Yes,
the area.
It was originally this fort the Romans built overlooking what would be Portsmouth Harbour. It was the Normans actually who developed Portchester Castle further, adding its great keep. Robert, the Duke of Normandy, landed at Portsmouth in 1101, intending to invade England. He failed. It's believed that storms prevented the majority of his ships from arriving, but his invasion probably would not have worked anyway, because the Vikings, though they were defeated for 100 years, they'd been licking their wounds in the meantime. They returned en masse that same year in 1001, striking back with a vengeance, pillaging Portsmouth and the surrounding area, threatening the Brits with extinction.
I love it! You guys are so great!
Okay.
Thank you.
That was the wrong button. Never mind.
Anyway, for the rest of England, all too seemed lost. The Horned were actually not horned, as this was probably made up by the Anglo-Saxon times. Vikings secured all of England to the north. This was the beginning of the Dark Ages.
Nice.
So over the next 100 years, the Danes continued to invade and be pretty horrible, basically. At the end of the 10th century, though, they renewed their onslaught of the shores of Wessex, sacking Southampton. Something good they did. No, sorry.
This has been going on for a very long time, this feud with Southampton. I don't think they really care about us, but...
We love Southampton, come on, they're lovely.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, they sacked Southampton, these Danes, and they harried and killed in Hampshire and Sussex as well. And they had this iron grip now on the British shores. And it was in 1017 that the Danes elected first ruler of England, King Canute. So he was the first, their first ruler, the Vikings. They got this guy, King Canute was in charge. Now you think, shit, these Vikings, they've been killing everyone, pillaging. Now they've got a leader, can't get any worse. But actually, King Canute was surprisingly quite a good ruler. He put a halt to all the illegal fornication, burning and pillaging, and he brought a semblance of peace and prosperity to England. You know, he was a religious guy, so that might be something to do with it. He was a stalwart supporter of the church, which may have aided in this return to some semblance of humanity. He basically told all his guys, hey, can you stop that ravaging over there, stop that fornication in the corner. I can see you. And he basically he sorted them out a bit, and he stopped them doing all their nasty stuff. But there were some other people that weren't happy about this. There were the Scottish. The Scots were like not happy about these foreigners invading all the time. They had the Saxons, Normans, Vikings, or whoever it was. They're like, I hate them all. So they set about attacking them. Although each time the Vikings beat them back. But when King Canute died in 1035, the king's empire, which also included Denmark and Norway, collapsed in a power struggle. Canute was dead, and all the other Vikings wanted a piece of these continents and countries. So, even though two more Danish kings followed the declining Vikings, a half-British king finally clawed his way back to the throne. And that was King Edward the Confessor in 1042. Now, he took over, much to the relief of many, and succeeded Canute the Great. Be careful how you say that as well. And his son, half a Canute.
Well, not a whole one.
Who was Edward's own half-brother. So Edward's half a Brit, half a Canute. Sorry. During his reign, many said that Edward was a saintly king. Edward restored he restored the rule of the House of Wessex again after the Danish conquered England. But when Edward died in 1066, that was quite an interesting. You're right.
I'll be alright.
Okay, I'm good now.
This
is serious, Simon. Shut up, Eddie. Anyway, where were we?
Continue. Sorry.
Alright, this is serious history. I've spent ages researching this.
I know. I'm not making noise of it. Carry on.
You know who I am. So Eddie died in 1066, which was not his Eddie, Edward the Confessor. Eddie baby. 1066 was an amazing year because that was the year of the Battle of Hastings. You probably know that. Is there a poem or something about the Battle of Hastings?
I have no idea.
Anyway,
okay.
Why are we laughing?
Keep going.
I've got to dry my eyes.
Yes, right.
Okay, so 1066, Edward died, and he didn't ever marry or father a child, which has led to some to believe think he was gay. Edward the Confessor, he was a king. He could have any girl he wanted. He could say you.
Yeah.
But he didn't do it. So everyone thinks, oh, maybe he was not that way inclined. But it's also argued that he was very religious, just like the Canuts. Well, one of the Canuts, half of the Canuts.
Not half of one.
But he spent
Oh, it was so professional. Okay, carry on. It won't be like this every episode.
But anyway, some led to think he was very religious. Actually, he wasn't gay, but he spent a big portion of his life in the building of Westminster Abbey. So he might well have remained chaste instead of doing any chasing, or indeed being chased after.
I've never actually been into Westminster Abbey, but
well, that was
Edward the Confessor. Of course,
that was Edward the Confessor's life's work, and he was too busy to get a girl. He was into that. But when he died, he didn't leave any kids, any heirs. He was briefly succeeded by his wife's brother, Harold Godwinson, who was defeated and killed the same year at the Battle of Hastings. Eddie the Confessor was too busy doing his church to get involved in that. But anyway, the Normans were invading, and that was under William the Conqueror, which was this big Battle of Hastings. And he was like, oh, there's no heir. There's a rift filled by turmoil. 3 successors to the throne rose up, but one of these was this aforementioned conqueror, William. His invasion carried a lot of weight, along with pointy spears, so it was this leader of the Normans who became the next king. During his reign, there was great unrest and many rebellions, but all were quashed by Will's iron grip during the years 1066 to 1087. It was during this time, towards the end of the 11th century, that Portchester Castle was built on the remains of the Roman fort overlooking the south coast of England. So that was when it happened with the Normans. During his final years, William the Conqueror ordered a great survey of the country, compiled into a tome known quite cheerily as the Domesday Book. As the Domesday Book. Though Portsmouth was not mentioned in this 1086 book, Bochland, Coppenor and Frodenstone, which people believe was Buckland, Copner and Fratton.
Well, that's very interesting, actually, because I have a map here. Well, this is a little bit later, it's 1194.
Right.
And it has Copner on it.
Yeah.
Coppenor, with an E at the end.
So, as far as we know,
Buckland.
There's no mention of Portsmouth, so Portsmouth, maybe it was, but these like Fratton and Copner and Buckland precede Portsmouth. We go by this data, which is quite interesting. But even more interesting is the next thing that happened. Now, King William, when he died in 1087, something very interesting happened. And this could make Shakespeare did some nice plays in his time, but he missed this one. This is a great story that I found and unearthed myself, and I may well write it into a play, and I might become the next bard. But probably not really.
No, do it.
All right, I'll do that next week.
Yeah. Phil's a script writer, just so you can.
I'm a scribe.
To where
I want to become a bard, though. Sounds better.
He's also written a book as well.
I have. We'll talk about this in a future podcast if you care. But yes, when William died in 1087, his second of 4 sons, William Rufus, or William II for short, was put in charge of England. Rufus made a pact with his elder brother, Robert Curthos, to rule together. So Robert went over to Normandy and ruled there as a king, and Rufus stayed in England as a king. And that was fine. But foul deeds were brewing in the New Forest. Yes, and Rufus was doing a bit of hunting in 1100, and an arrow flew through the air and impaled itself into Rufus, killing him. Now, it came from one of Rufus's own men, apparently, which seems a bit nasty. How can you fire an arrow with a coincidence like that?
This is very suspicious.
And just after this, one of William the Conqueror's other 2 sons, called Henry, the youngest, I think second youngest son, he's like, Rufus is my big brother's dead. I'm next in line to rule England. Because Robert's too busy ruling Normandy, so I should be the King of England. So he forcibly took the title of King Henry. Now, I don't know about you, this seems a little coincidental. But Robert, King of Normandy, he's like, oh, I'm going to go back to England for a bit. Came back and saw his brother was dead and Henry was on the throne. He's angry. Huh? What's going on here? My young brother's got an arrow in him and you're sitting up there all haughty like, oh, was it you who impaled my bro? And no, said Henry. But Robert didn't believe him. He got loads of his mates. Because, you see, Henry was a bit of a tosser. He had many wives in his time and many mistresses, with even more illegitimate children on top of that, as if several wives weren't enough. And he was a greedy so-and-so.
It doesn't sound like he was tossing much.
Well, and that. So Robert was like, somehow my little bro has been plotting against his own family. So he got his lads together and began many conflicts against Henry, culminating with the Battle of Tinchebray on the 28th of September 1086, which took place in Normandy, because Robert was going over to England, and then in the end Henry's like, right, I'm going to sort this guy out. So horrible Henry, he went on the attack with his bigger army and he defeated Robert and imprisoned him for the rest of his life. Poor old Robert. He was only sticking up for Rufus, but he was slammed up for 20 years. He died in prison in 1134.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but happily, after a week of illness, probably syphilis, Henry joined him a year later in December of 1135. So what's interesting?
Well, what do we learn from that? I mean, there are risks if you're going to go around being power hungry and empire building. You know, great risk comes with that, doesn't it?
With great risks comes great.
With great power comes. You're doing Spider-Man quotes.
Oh yeah.
Okay, carry on. Right.
So now let's get into the next bit. Portsmouth is finally formed because of.
Okay, I'll let it.
A few more kings later, Richard I appeared on the royal scene, also known as Richard the
Lionheart?
Yeah, correct.
Thank you. Thanks.
So Richard, during his rule from 1157 to 1199, spent a lot of time on his armies, spending most of his funding on them. I don't know if he was the kind of person that, taxed the rich, gave it to his armies, or taxed the poor. But anyway, he played an important role in the history of Portsmouth. In 1194, he granted Portsmouth its first royal charter, which marked the town's formal establishment as a significant port. This charter allowed Portsmouth to hold a market, have a fair, and established a local court system. This town also gained rights to collect custom duties, solidifying its importance in trade and commerce.
Can I chime in with a quote here from the charter? This is actually directly from the charter. I don't know what half of it means, but I'm going to read it out anyway. Get your dictionaries out. We have also granted that the said town of Portsmouth and all of our burgesses therein and holding thereof shall be quit and free of toll and pontage and passage and pedage and payage and stallage and tallage, and of shires and hundreds, and of suits of shires and hundreds, and of sheriffs and sergeants, summonses and aids, and all pleas and plaints, and of blood wit and fight wit and leer wit.
What the hell are you going on about?
Weapon takes, and of pleas of the forest, and of forest guard and regard, and of all other secular exactions, both by sea and by land, wheresoever they may come, in all our lands. So, if you can make any
sense out of that. I can't make any sense.
Anyway, back in the midst of time when we started talking about Portsmouth history, if there's anyone still listening, Simon mentioned Jean de Guisos.
Yes, but is it Jean or Jean?
It might have been Jean.
It might have been Jean, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's Geezer, because I think that's where we get this local saying, geese.
Alright, geese.
Alright, geese, how's it going?
Oh, so maybe, that's quite important. So anyway, while Richard was sorting out Portsmouth, he gets all the credit. Jean de Guizer, he's often considered the true founder of Portsmouth, because in 1180 he was a wealthy Norman lord who owned land in southern England, including the area where Portsmouth now stands. Jean de Giza is credited with establishing the town where he laid out its initial streets and created a small port, recognising the strategic importance of the site. The land he developed became the foundation for Portsmouth's early growth, particularly due to the ideal location for trade and naval operations. While Portsmouth existed in some form prior to his influence, Jean de Giza is associated with giving it a more structured layout and formalising its existence as a town.
He's associated with giving it.
Yeah. So Jean, yeah.
It's good. And I've got this map here from the same era, and it's got Portsmouth is on here now, at 1194 around the Charter time.
Okay.
And it's called Portesaya land.
Portesaya now. It's called Portsmouth.
It may be
Portesaya.
It may be island rather than land, because I can't quite read the Latin style of text.
It's very indecipherable.
Yes.
Almost.
But it definitely has Copper on here.
But someone's written Portsealand on Biro. Oh, that's you.
And Kingston and Buckland, which is Buckland. Froddington, which I think is Fratton actually now. Because we have the Froddington Arms, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's what.
Middleton, that may have become Milton. And it looks like I can't read it. Eastney, which is now Eastney.
Eastleigh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And all the northern towns are on here as well. Paulsgrove, Palgrave, Porchester, which frankly looks like it says Parcel Force. Wimmering, Cosham, Drayton, Farlington.
Wow.
Purbrook is on there as well.
Wow. So yeah, this is the time where everything was coming together and forming. And even a bit later in 1200, the next King John, granted Portsmouth additional royal charters, further boosting its status. These charters allowed the town to hold fairs, markets, and maintain a royal dockyard, which became central to the Royal Navy's operations. He also ordered the construction of defensive structures such as a quay and a warehouse to support military and naval activities. But unlike Richard the Lionheart, John Boy wasn't just thinking of protecting the country from future invasions. Oh no, he had thoughts not dissimilar to those Roman lads and the Vikings' lust for conquest and carnage. Summoning his earls, barons and military advisors, he planned an invasion of Normandy. And in 1229, declaring war against France, the next king, Henry III, assembled a force described by historian Lake Allen as one of the finest armies that has ever been raised in England. Fortunately for France, the invasion stalled and returned from France in October of 1231. But this was the beginning of what would lead to many conflicts with France, beginning with the 100 Years' War in 1337 and ultimately culminating in the famous Battle of the Nile in 1798 and the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, which is my final bit of this amazing historical brilliance. Oh yeah. Now finally, if you want to go through the history of England and pick the most famous heroic guy, I think you can't get much better than Vice Admiral Horatio Nelson, because all his life he went through. You can't imagine what he went through, even from when he was a kid. He was blighted with malaria most of his life, and he had a side helping of yellow fever in his 20s to go along with that.
Nice.
And despite all these things affecting his health, he achieved a lot. He rose up and he became one of the greatest naval commanders. Though he was prone to strutting up and down the decks of his ship during battles.
He was.
That was his downfall, one of his other downfalls, because he was a prime target for snipers. And as a result of this, he was blinded in his right eye during the siege of Corsica in 1794. He got a nasty hernia after being hit in the stomach at the Battle of Cape St. Vincent in 1797 and lost his entire right arm the same year while fighting in the Canary Islands.
And he used to parade up and down the deck because he was very courageous and very brave. And he knew that if he did that, he would be leading from the front and his men would follow and they would be more motivated.
Wow.
But he also had this belief that the greatest honour was to die for your country.
Yeah, and on top of that, he loved a good battle, did our Nelson. He was well up for a scuffle when on the 21st of October 1805 his 27-ship fleet came up against the French and their mates, the Spanish. 33 ships in all. They were there as part of Napoleon's plan to invade the United Kingdom. The French and the Spanish fleets combined to take control of the English Channel. And they were outnumbered, but this did not deter our Nelson, did it?
It did not.
He strolled up and down the decks like normal, shouting orders, his waistcoat flashing and weighed down by his many medals, making him even more of a target than usual. Nelson, with his ship, the HMS Victory, sailed his fleet directly at the Allied battle line's flank, hoping to break said line into pieces. The plan worked almost perfectly. Nelson's column split the Franco-Spanish fleet into three, giving the British temporary superiority.
And this was a great advantage because the cannon were at the side of the ship. So if he ploughed through the middle of a line of ships in three places, each of those rows of ships going through the French and Spanish frigates were able to slaughter the ship in front and the ship behind. So that each one was able to take down two ships at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And in that ensuing fierce battle, 20 Allied ships were lost, while the British lost 0. But, there's always a but, the aggressive offensive exposed the leading British ships to intense crossfire as they approached the Franco-Spanish lines. Nelson's own HMS Victory led the front column and was almost knocked out of action. Almost, but not quite. But tragically, Nelson himself was shot by a French musketeer during the battle, and he died shortly after, once the battle had ended with the British triumphant. This victory confirmed British naval supremacy and Portsmouth as the world's greatest naval port.
Exactly.
And that's where we're leaving this amazing journey through the history of Portsmouth. The second part of a legendary journey which sweepingly surmises the history of Portsmouth. Back in our first pod, we took a tentative and trepidatious tour through history, trundling through the tendrils, tentacles, and sometimes testicles of time, from those dastardly dinosaurs right up to the daring-do sea battles of Nelson. For this second part, I have again extensively researched and laboured away at great expense and tremendous amounts of coffee, was consulting both the web, Wikipedia, and books in Waterlooville's amazing bibliothèque.
And there wasn't actually much expense, was there really? Just the coffee.
Couple. And I've now assembled what I call the Origins of Portsmouth, Part 2.
Horrible Henrys.
Horrible Henrys. Right, last time we discussed how Portsmouth, in its domineering position in the south of England, had grown from a calm patch of coastal crud into the big bad boss of the naval world, with its illustrious harbour, which put paid to pirates, pilferers and philanderers aplenty. Yet for all these unwashed intrusions onto its soil, there came a time when England got perhaps too big for its britches. Sick of being invaded throughout history by Romans, Vikings, Saxons, Normans, you name it, they decided to start doing invading of their own, conquering and colonising many countries of the world. In fact, there are only 22 countries untouched by British invasion.
Really?
Over the years.
22? That's incredible.
We could do a whole nother pod on this.
And there must be, 500 countries in the world?
Yeah. So we did go a bit overboard there. Now, this lust for invasion, of course, it was all down to Britain's leaders who wanted to make a name for themselves. In part 1, I mentioned a particular king called Henry, later called Henry I, once there was more of them. And there's 8 of them, in fact. 8 of the blighters. Well, Henry he was the king of England from...
What's he called? Neo?
Don't get that.
Matrix.
Yeah.
The one.
The one. Whoa.
Tenuous film link there.
Yeah.
I knew that button would come in handy.
Should have gone to the bathroom before it.
Yeah.
Started. Anyway, from 1068, Henry I until 1st of December 1135. I knew that from a paper I'm reading off. I mean, I knew it from my mind. He used his dubiously won titular title to cavort with copious consorts and courtesans on top of his wide-ranging collection of won-over wives, producing enough potential heirs to fill an extra-large airship, if those had indeed existed back then. Anyway, I don't know about you, mate.
Why do I let you do this research on your own?
But I don't know about you, but if you look through the royals, this penchant for abusing power seems to be a trait among many of the Henrys who became king after each of their increasing in numerals namesakes. So before we get back to today, I thought I would briefly touch upon each of them, and while doing so, note their contributions, if any.
What was a pin shot?
What penchant?
Penchant.
Penchant. But you're speaking like a Frenchman.
Yeah, but that's how you pronounce it.
No, I say pension.
You said pin shot.
Pension.
Okay, anyway, sorry, carry on.
It's my accent which is involved.
Sorry.
Henry II was the next Henry, right? Also known as Henry Curtmantle. Have you heard of him?
No.
Well, he was king.
Curtmantle.
Yeah, Curtmantle.
Oh, Curtmantle.
Like mantelpiece.
Okay.
Well, he was king from 1154 until he died in 1189. And his mum was Matilda, daughter of Henry I. And she seemed to have learned a lot from him. I mean, if you had horrible Henry I as a dad, you would learn some things, wouldn't you? About, because he wasn't a very nice guy, and she passed these traits onto her son he was from the age of 14, fascinating his young mind with such materialistic virtues of vanity and military might, as she coaxed him ever closer to the throne. At the age of 18, Henry Curtmantle married the gorgeous Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was quite a catch on top of her looks, because she had huge tracts of land in the neighbouring country where she resided. Through her, Henry C controlled most of France. By the time the current king, Stephen of Blois, died, Henry had enough status to take over as King of England. And all this land and power went to young Henry's head. And he decided he wanted to control all the other factions that held sway within England, particularly the church, because they had a lot more say than they do now. And because of this, he had a falling out with his mate, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was then mysteriously murdered.
Oh dear.
They were starting to see a trend with the Henrys, aren't we?
Yes.
But Henry, he also had a falling out with none other than King Louis, or King Louis, maybe. He was seventh, King Louis VII of France. Particularly because this Frenchman had more Roman numerals on his name. I guess Louis also wasn't pleased. Louis also wasn't pleased with Henry II also controlling a lot of what went on in what should have been his borders, thanks to his missus. These two rulers fought for over 2 decades. Henry, thanks for the sound effects. Henry doing considerably better, taking some chunks of France permanently for his own, including Brittany and Toulouse. You might say he had nothing to lose, but you probably wouldn't. Henry had 8 kids with Eleanor.
8?
All with Eleanor. He didn't cheat, apparently. But those kids turned out to be real brats. Oh my God, even worse than their dad.
And that's brat in the old sense of the word, not the new sense.
Indeed. Having desires for land and immediate power, and that was while they're still in nappies. Henry tried his best to please them, but this led to lots of revolts and rebellions as he took stuff from other people and gave it to them. Here you go, have this land, have these jewels, whatever. But they were like, it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. 3 of his revolting sons, including one known as Young Henry, encouraged from the shadows by Philip, the son of King Louis VII of France, trying to get some payback here, he decisively encouraged them to defeat their dad. Their own dad. In the end, after some scuffles, he fled with a bleeding ulcer and he died soon after that. Henry II died and he was succeeded by his son, Richard I, also known as Richard the
Lionheart.
Yes.
Awesome!
I only said good things about him last time, Richard, if you recall in the first part. the Richard the Lionheart. But it turns out he's one of these spoilt brats who went against his own dad. So now all that good stuff I said about him, I'm like, what? I just can't look at him the same way, can you? Anyway, time went on, and it was quite a long time, in fact, till we get Henry III. He was king from 1207 until 1272. He took the throne 9 years old. Because there was a war on, you see. You know, there was this war called the First Barons' War. Have you heard about that?
No.
Oh, well, anyway, it was a war with some barons, I think. And who better than a Henry to take charge? It was a good choice. Even at 9, Henry was like, right, let's kill him.
I guess, you know, if you take the throne at that age, you'd have lots of advisors anyway, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah.
You'd have councils of people.
Says kings don't really do much. They just parade around with their fancy clothes. And
I think they used to do a lot more than they do now.
Yeah, but anyway, it turned out to be a good choice after all, because Henry III defeated this rebellion at the battles of Lincoln and Sandwich. The latter I may have seen something similar to when I grabbed a subway in the Paulsgrove the other day.
Oh, yeah.
That's supposed to be funny.
Fight out in the queue.
Have we got applause for my funny joke? Surprisingly, this Henry, also known as the Henry of Winchester, agreed to abide by the Great Charter of 1225 and an update on 1215's Magna Carta. Have you heard what that is?
I've heard of the Magna Carta.
What is it?
It's a large charter, but it basically gives certain rights. And I know I think there are about 4 of the rights which are still effective even today.
Wow.
But it's stuff like...
don't pick your nose in public.
No, it's fundamental principles of law, like the right to have a jury of your peers. So you have the right to be tried by a jury of people who are similar to you.
Right.
You know, members of the public.
Don't burp in public as well. Anyway, yeah, this Magna Carta...
But there are 4 copies of the Magna Carta.
Oh.
And they were held, I think one was in York Cathedral, one was in Salisbury Cathedral, one in London. I can't remember where the other one was.
Well, go and check out the Magna Carta.
I did actually go and see the Magna Carta in London, and one of the other ones, the one in Salisbury.
Well, this Magna Carta was updated in 1225, which is the one that Henry III was asked to abide by. Now, he was the king. He could have said, nah, sod this, but he went with it. And this limited royal power and protected the rights of the rich barons. So why did one of the Henrys did something like that? Because they were all power hungry mostly. There's a reason, because he was a good role model, because he had an idol. He looked up to.
Yeah.
Edward the Confessor, also known as Half the Knut. That was his idol, because if you remember, Eddie the First, he was involved with loads of religious stuff, and he did lots of good things. So these barons say, oh, this Henry, he's a bit into the religious stuff. Let's get him to, abide by this charter, and because these royal types are getting a bit hard to handle. So let's rein their reins in a bit. And surprisingly, Henry did this without complaints, because he actually worked hard as a king. It's like a job to him. It wasn't just like gallivanting around and cavorting with courtesans. He didn't leave all the crappy jobs to his ministers. He did some himself, and he gave a lot generously to charities. So even though this Edward the Confessor was long dead, for some reason he looked up to this previous king, and he even went so far as to adopt him as his patron saint. It could be that Henry was also into this religion and his Edward's handiwork of Westminster Abbey, but he wasn't just a churchy-perchy, as mentioned in the last pod.
Did it say that in Wikipedia?
No, it might come up with that.
Churchy-perchy.
But as mentioned in the last pod, Henry assembled one of England's finest armies at Portsmouth's brand spanking new naval base. Finally got to Portsmouth, did you believe that? This is what he used to plan to invade France, because there was all this fraternising going on with France over the years, and they went out. They amassed an army. They went across the English Channel, but then they got the heebie-jeebies and they came back. So it didn't happen, this invasion. But of course, this Henry sounds alright, doesn't he, so far? This Henry III.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as a totally good Henry.
No, there isn't.
And this one has some downsides too. Shall I tell you what they are?
Go for it.
Well, he taxed the people a lot. He caused a lot of uproar with his expensive foreign policies and heavy-handed highway robbery-style taxation. To do this, he used some Poitevin half-brothers called Licinians to collect debts, who became notorious for their heavy-handedness, and they may have even coined the phrase, you want to be careful, mate, because things might get broken. But a more Shakespearean version of these words, probably. Henry, in his money-grubbing ways, especially went after the Jewish people of England, probably because of religious differences, as it always seems to be the problem, even today. But he took their hard-earned wonga away, and he used it mainly to build lots of palaces and hold lavish religious ceremonies. One of these, he married his wife, called Eleanor, like the other Henry. But it wasn't the same one, of course. They all seem to have the same names. But with Eleanor of Provence, he had 5 kids. But Eleanor must have got a bit naffed off with hubby's way of doing things, because it is said that to be likely her who went behind his back and talked to his consorts and convinced them to kick out these Poitevin thugs that were going around taxing, thumping people. So they were rather uncouth, according to her, and that's what she did. But Henry III died in 1272 after a 52-year reign, which is the longest in medieval history. And moving on, another almost 100 years later, Henry IV, also known as Henry Bolingbroke, he took power through force, overthrowing Richard II, his childhood friend and playmate. So he sounds like another horrible Knut. So basically they grew up together, these two, Richard II and Henry IV, but when they got a bit older, Henry chucked him in prison. This is a big problem, because somehow this contributed towards general disagreement and unpleasantness during the War of the Roses. You heard of the War of the Roses?
I have, yeah.
What happened then?
Well, they had a big fight.
Who did?
It went on quite a long time, didn't it? This was the Tudors fighting.
That's right.
And there was the red rose and the white rose, wasn't it?
That's right. I think, yeah. They were fighting over. I'm not sure. It wasn't about flowers. But Henry IV had 2 wives. The first of which he sired 6 children with. Thankfully, they were better behaved than Henry III's. But during his rule, or was that Henry II's? Anyway, during this rule, Henry IV encounters a lot of rebellions, including those from yet another Henry, the English knight, Henry Percy, also known as Hotspur. In the Battle of Shrewsbury in 1403, they come up against each other, and during this battle, Henry's eldest son, called, guess what? Henry, was wounded by.
I thought you were going to say.
You know what? There's always, why there's so many Henrys as king, because they're all called Henry. It's hard not to get Henry. It's like when you used to get these packets of the Panini football stickers. Oh yeah. And Panini, is it Panini? Panini.
Panini.
I think you can say that. And they always got the same player, every pack. Sometimes.
Yes. They definitely printed a lot of certain players. So.
And they printed a lot of Henrys.
Yeah, so you had lots of doubles. But then you could go to school and trade them.
You could trade them, couldn't you?
Like we used to do with cigarette cards.
I don't know if you can do that with kings.
No.
Unless you're playing cards. But yes, this Henry's eldest son, called Henry, he was up against this knight, Henry Percy. So things got a bit confusing on the battlefield. But Henry, son of the Henry IV, he got a arrow or something to the face,
No, another one.
Yeah, an arrow to the face. Boom!
Was it Rufus? Who was the one who got?
Rufus as well.
He
Yeah,
caught an arrow in the last episode.
Yeah, well, this one, who got arrow to the face, this Henry, he became King Henry V. So I think he was also known as Scarface, but maybe not. The only king, this Henry V was the only king to be crowned King of France. Very interesting, because the French were continuing to attack England all this time, and by now no one knows started it. It was just fighting. Oh, I hate these people, I hate them over the sea, let's just fight. And he's like, I had enough of this, I'm going to stop it. So he had enough of this malarkey. He went over there to take charge. Can you stop all this cannonball flinging and swashbuckling? It's just not cricket. That's what he said. That's his words verbatim, apparently. In 1415, he prepared to depart from Portchester in the Trinity Royal, a mighty galleon. And on Saturday, the 10th of August, on 1415, he ordered his mast hoisted up to announce to everyone he was about to sail over there and order all ships in the neighbouring ports to join with him on this epic voyage. So it was that 1,400 vessels carrying an army of some 6,000 men-at-arms and 24,000 archers were ready to head out across the channel that next day. And guess what happened?
A storm.
No, they did it. They went over there, and after some besieging, they had a historic victory at Agincourt. You may have heard of it, 25th of October 1415. So this was the first victory of France. And Henry V, he also ordered the construction of Portsmouth's famous Round Tower as a naval defence in 1417. But it was it was him, and but it wasn't fully finished for another 10 years. In the meantime, along came Henry VI.
I bet he didn't know there was going to be a lovely cafe underneath the Round Tower.
Yeah, he'd have liked that, wouldn't he? Could have got a crusty roll on the way to his battles. It's a bit like McDonald's drive-thru.
I thought you said Madonna's drive-thru.
Is my voice fit?
Drive-thru, yeah.
And anyway, along came Henry V. He was more of a landlubber, and they had all these ships in the harbour. He was like, nah, get rid of them. And he was pretty sick of all this navy luck. He sold up almost all his predecessors' ships during his reign. By 1430, the navy only had the Trinity Royal, the Grace Dieu, and Jesus left. That's all about Henry the. I think that's enough about him, because he was an idiot. He just tore apart Portsmouth basically, and it's they're all horrible. I don't like any of these Henrys. Henry VII was the next one, the first Tudor king. He had more sturdy sea legs though than his previous one, credited to be the founder of the Royal Navy, though this perhaps wasn't a title which he truly deserved. Sure, he did fix up all the fortifications, rebuilding the Round Tower in stone, along with raising the Square Tower in 1494. He also assisted one Robert Brigidine in construction of the world's first dry dock, as well as making foundations for building and repairing ships in Portsmouth. He did all this, but in terms of navy vessels, he actually ordered few ships to be built himself. He preferred to rent them, you see, from Spain. Those Spanish galleons were pretty nice, pretty tasty, so I'll have some of those, and because it's cheaper, a bit like Blockbuster's video back in the day. You know, you just rent a movie.
Great days.
That was a bad analogy, but
that's good.
Oh, was it? Brilliant, thanks.
And the Square Tower is yes, and the Square Tower is now a music venue, and yeah, I saw a gig there recently. And
how'd you get there?
How'd you get there? By bus.
It's in the water.
No, it's not. No, it's near the water. It's right on the edge of the water.
The Brown Tower's in the water though, and they did that game show. Did you ever see that game show? It's a bit like the same person who made the Crystal Maze. He made this game show for Port Royal, I think, something like that. Port, I don't know, but it was set on. They shot some of it in the Round Tower. There you go.
But you can also have your wedding at the Square Tower as well. If you want to get married, you can get married at the Square Tower.
That's cool.
Well, that's killed the podcast.
Yeah.
Time for cut button D.
Don't do it, man. This is it.
Is it?
Okay. Right. So Henry VII. He was a known penny pincher. You see. Why own when you can borrow other people's battalions for battling with? He didn't know the importance. Well, he knew the importance of having an imposing fleet. But unlike Henry VI, he thought all that water was enough to separate enemies. However, I'm not sure what the agreement was if Henry VII's lone vessels from the Spanish were sunk, or how much compensation would have to be paid. But I guess that was a wager he was willing to risk. Well, I might be doing Henry VII a bit of a disservice, actually, because he seemed like a good lad. Out of all the Henrys, despite my seeming prejudice against Henrys, he wasn't really that tight. He probably just had the heart of a merchant. He believed in making every penny count, and often taxed the noblemen for a change, getting them to foot the bills. Obviously, today's governments could take a leaf or maybe a whole bloody tree out of his books. Methinks, but that was the first good Henry, and there was only one more to follow. Were things changing for the better? Would this final Henry continue to drag his namesakes out of the murky depths, or sink them like a certain ship called the Mary Rose, which we will get to soon?
Oh, good, yeah.
So finally, looking at Henry VIII, we might, everyone knows a bit about Henry VIII.
Everyone thinks they do, I think, but actually a lot of it is not. A lot of the common knowledge is not actually correct.
Yeah, that's why I put the record straight with my amazing.
One of the things is how many wives he had, because I saw an episode of QI the other day.
Everyone thinks he had 12 wives.
With Stephen Fry, and people normally think, well, he had 6 wives, but actually, I think they said he was only married to 3 of them because there were certain reasons why the weddings weren't legitimate.
Well, let's not.
Weddings were annulled, or they didn't do the service properly.
Let's not get bogged down in logistics. They were wives, because I put 6. Okay. Anyway, he had many wives. He seemed to be going for a world record, or a king record. But if they were wives or not, funny enough, all of these girls that he dated and got serious with were all related by blood to King Edward I. They were all Knuts. They were quarter Knuts. But not only that, when he tired of them, he didn't just separate mutually. He was
separated their heads.
Often prone to separating their heads from their shoulders.
Which is...
On top of this, he had heaps of affairs. What a lad.
Really?
Also, Henry wasn't a fan of the previous restraints on the royals since the Magna Carta days. He used trumped-up charges. Oh, Trump, he's out, isn't he? It's the ladies' one.
Well, not yet.
Yeah.
No, they're still voting.
It's all over, mate.
Is it?
I don't. I think they're both. I don't know. I think the whole world's messed up now.
I thought they were still voting. Okay.
Let's not get into that.
Interesting.
Anyway, Henry VIII used trumped-up charges of treason and heresy to quell any dissent amongst his idealistic views that kings had divine rights. Any naysayers were sliced at the neck or banished, including some of his chief ministers like Thomas Cromwell, maybe a relation. Aside
to who?
we will find out.
Surely not Oliver.
I don't know. It was around that time. Aside from his worrying preference to put an axe to his exes and colleagues instead of having a civilised chat, Henry VIII did lots of other stuff. Maybe his refusal to let his wives become widows was out of concern that they might go to the Anglo-Saxon Times and start gossiping about what lay beneath his gigantic codpiece, which could well have been compensating for something. Well, anyway, I digress. Among Henry VIII's accomplishments was his work in Portsmouth. It could be said, in fact, that he was the true founder of the Royal Navy, as, unlike his pa, Henry VIII actually got more involved with assembling a mighty battle fleet of his own, not just a rental one. Also, unlike his father, Henry VIII was a big spender and wore the most splendid fabric upon his ever-widening waistline. Henry VIII was everywhere during his reign. He put his name, cemented his name in history, perhaps more than any other king of England, or maybe the world.
I have seen his suit of armour. They've got a suit of armour in the Tower of London.
You can't get away from him. I was in Cambridge.
And he was quite short.
King's Colours built by Henry
Very
VIII.
stocky.
King's Colours, Henry VIII, everywhere. And he didn't lift a single brick. He put his name on it.
So did he build Southsea Castle?
He didn't build anything. He just ordered people to build it. These kings.
Well, no, I didn't.
What about
I didn't think he laid the bricks.
What about poor old Nobby with his hob carrier, hobgoblin Nobby?
Who?
Picking up the brick, putting all the bricks down. No one cares about him. He did all the hard work.
I don't know who this is.
Anyway, many of England's historic landmarks he had a hand in, or a shout in, including Southsea Castle, which he allegedly built in 1539 in anticipation of yet another French invasion. He got the money to do so from his dissolution of the monasteries. This is another sore subject of Henry VIII. He didn't like the church. He's like, oh, it's a waste of time,
what
isn't
was it about the monasteries he didn't like? Was it the fact that they had their own money and they raised funds?
Yeah, they made
themselves?
and what's this stuff?
They had a lot of land.
Why do you sit in this building and shout at sing to some invisible guy? It's silly. Just get rid of it.
Is that what he thought?
Yeah. So apparently,
because he was involved in changing the law on divorce, wasn't he? So that he didn't like the churches because they wouldn't let him get divorced.
He just said, look, if
he just found any way and every way he could to get out of his marriages.
He just said, if your wife's giving you a bit of a lip, just do this. He wasn't very nice. He got some money from the churches. He also invested heavily in the town's dockyard, using that money, expanding it to 8 acres, no less. Portsmouth dockyard stretched from the Round Tower to Fort Blockhouse in Gosport Harbour. That far. Yet Henry VIII also had the misfortune and humiliation, some would say deservedly, to watch one of his ships sink before his eyes in one of the most dramatic mishaps in all of naval history. Well, that was the Mary Rose, of course. This is a lovely ship, first built by Henry VIII, or at least the people he told to build it, in 1509 and updated in 1536. He wanted some new guns which were state of the art, stuck in there, cast bronze muzzler loaders. They were swanky but heavy. Some people say it was due to this poor design, or it was the open gun ports which let in a bit too much water, which caused it to sink, blob 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 blob, in the harbour.
Yeah, I heard it was a design flaw. So to be when it was fully laden, the water line would be higher than the lowest gun ports, which was a total design flaw. And
plus, I think Henry VIII must have stepped foot on it with his big belly as well, which probably lowered it even more.
And I heard he was standing in Southsea Castle watching as it sank.
Yeah.
Very unhappy about it.
He probably wasn't. He probably cut a few heads off that day.
Interestingly, there is a warship. If you ever go to Stockholm, there's a warship in Stockholm called the Vasa, which sank in similar circumstances in the harbour.
Really?
Yeah, and they have a museum there, the Vasa Museum, and the ship is there fully restored.
Oh, just like the Mary Roses.
Yeah, but this ship has been fully restored and it's been repainted to be all very colourful and laden with gold. Inlaid with gold and stuff. Yeah,
so it was
the Mary Rose, of course, you can see in our Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. But the Mary Rose is really it's half a hull, isn't it? And it's wooden only. There's no sort of fixtures and fittings, and
there's only half a canard holding it together.
But we when we were at school, I remember it was quite dramatic. We watched the video footage of the raising of the Mary Rose.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
There was a big yellow frame, wasn't there? And they put that around the ship and raised it out of the water, and it got to that one point where it just peeped above the surface of the water.
Right, yeah.
And then the framework jolted and sunk back in, and there was sort of a desperate moment there where everyone thought the project had gone completely wrong.
The project manager looked a bit like Henry VIII did at the time. And what about Stockholm? So maybe I thought this Mary Rose singing was bad, so something similar happened in Stockholm. Maybe they say the same thing. They sit there, that's just the biggest blunder ever.
I think it was similar that they put too many cannon on there and too much gold and
don't
everything
get
else.
too hasty with the hardware. That's what I can say. But whatever happened before it sunk, the Mary Rose was in Henry's fleet before that, and it was
a flagship.
It was a flagship, exactly. And after an alliance with the Emperor Charles V of Spain, probably because they loaned all these boats, they become friends. England went at war with both France and Scotland, with the Spanish in tow. It was Henry himself who landed at Calais on the 14th of July 1544 with an army of 30,000 men and besieged Boulogne, which surrendered on the 14th of September before the might of Henry's horde. So Henry did quite a bit. He got some France back. It was always, to and fro between them during these times, and these fighters just fought France all the time. It seemed every king had a bit of a scuffle with France. And Henry, after that, he died 3 years later in 1547 at the age of 55. By this time, he had become severely obese with a waistline of 54 inches, 140 centimetres. This could be traced back to
That is big.
Yeah, it wasn't because he ate all the pies. Well, he did that too, but he had a jousting accident from which he suffered a leg wound, which aggravated an earlier injury which doctors found hard to treat, and he suffered from this for the rest of his life, and it truly impaired his mobility, leading him to be carried about with the use of mechanical devices. And this was the last of the Henrys. He was gone. England could breathe a sigh of relief. No more Henrys. And they did some good, but mostly people would rather forget them. After Henry VIII's reign, the land was blighted by plague in 1563 as like an appendix afterthought for the Henrys were gone. There was a plague which ravaged England, and Portsmouth itself lost 300 of its 2,000 inhabitants. But life went on in Pompey nevertheless, until the English Civil War came around. And that's the end of part 2 of my amazing trip.
Horrible Henrys.
Yeah. I hope you learned something. I certainly did.
I did.
I can't pronounce a lot of things, that's what I learned. Anyway. Third part of my forge forth through the years of the history of Portsmouth. I have literally spent time on weaving this tapestry of tremendous tales, and now present to you, for your listening and educational pleasure, the origins of Portsmouth, Part 3, the rise of the South Innigees. Note, the Innigees part of that title is entirely optional. Right, where did we get to on the last 2 podcasts ago? We got right up to this big crest of a wave which was going to come down on Britain, known as the English Civil War.
It was definitely a tsunami of Henrys.
Yeah, the Henrys, holistic Henrys, have all gone. But in its place was an uncertainty. But there was one thing. The English Civil War was partly about this because, all about this, because basically it was part of this another war called the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. Sounds a bit like a Chinese battle, doesn't it? It lasted from 1642 to 1651 and involved the political struggle between the royalists and the parliamentarians, who wanted to be involved in the decision making and not just leave it to the royals, particularly after those Henry geezers. They had enough of it. This Henry VIII, he was like throwing his power about and his big belly. And we need another group of people that can make decisions and have a bit of say in things. So that's where the parliamentarians came from. The king at the time, Charles I, he didn't like this idea. He wouldn't even talk to them. He refused to debate with these scummy cretins, And this, of course, led to violence, led by the New Model Army, who had radicals like Oliver Cromwell, maybe related to Thomas, one of Henry VIII's outcast barons or people. Anyway, they weren't ones to trifle with, this New Model Army. And you see, Simon, power is in the people.
Is it?
Apparently so. Most residents of Portsmouth, including its mayor, were all for the parliamentarians changing things up. They want change. Although there's a military governor called Colonel Goring. He seemed to be supportive of the Nancy Boy Royalists. And to this effort, he blockaded the town from the sea with his Royal Navy boys. He didn't want these parliamentarians coming in. He's like, no, this is Royal Portsmouth. The people didn't like that. But secretly, Goring had convinced both sides of his loyalty, a bit like Toshiro Mifune's character in Akira Kurosawa's legendary film Yojimbo. I said that right.
How did you get through that without cocking up?
Well, this conniving colonel, he was getting funding from both the king and the parliament. At one point, this drew suspicion from the parliamentarians who summoned him before them. Not only did old Goring manage to convince them of his innocence, but he also received applause.
and laughter.
And got extra funding. What a lad. Anyway, the Parley-Farleys, they sent groups to besiege the blockade, firing the guns of Selsey Castle at the obstructing ships. It all kicked off, and when the ships hit the land, see what I did there? Goring had a plan all worked out to escape. Apparently, he said to them, look, I've rigged a square tower with explosives. If you don't let me go, because there's a whole garrison of remaining royalists in there, if you don't let me go, I'll blow them all up. So they let him go. Him and his lads were allowed safe passage out of the city. So Colonel Goring, he pulled it off. He stitched up the royalists and the parliamentarians, made loads of money, buggered off, and didn't see the result, which was the parliamentarians winning. They beat the royalists, and Charles I was actually executed at the end of this, 1649.
Beheaded.
Bonk, bonk, bonk. While Goring wasted his later years in frivolous amusements. What a lad. So after this, that was the end of the royals. Thank God for that. There's none of these posh twats up there on their thrones. Now we can have a bit of, proper discussions without these people. But it wasn't going to be, obviously, because they're still royals even today, believe it or not. So what happened, Simon? What happened? Well, Portsmouth began to prosper due to having this Commonwealth and a proper way of debating and deciding things, and not leaving it all up to the rich posh twats who lived in their own bubbles and were pretty useless at real world stuff most of the time.
You're quite damning of the royals, aren't you?
However, royals were still retained in an agreement with the church. So the church's fault. Kept them in, didn't it? Because they wanted their cash flow, their cash cows. As such, Charles.
If only we had a moo button.
Have we?
No.
What's that one?
No, we don't have a moo button. Sorry about that.
Well, anyway, the royals were retained. Okay, so Charles II, he wasn't allowed to be King of England anymore after the killing his dad. But they said, you can be King of Scotland, Malado. So 1650, he was made King of Scotland. The same year, the HMS Portsmouth was launched from Portsmouth. An interesting side note was that Charles II, he married Catherine of Braganza in 1662. It was her who is attributed to introducing the cultural practice of tea drinking to England. Hopefully now things could get sorted out with less aggro by including a nice cup of char in those parliamentary debates. During the 17th century, Portsmouth grew further still. A new wharf being constructed in 1663, and between 1667 and 1685, the town's fortifications were rebuilt. New walls constructed with bastions, and 2 moats were dug, making Portsmouth one of the world's most heavily fortified places. What was that? Around 1781, a group of Portsmouth-based sailors visited a place called Pompey Pillar in Egypt. Some say the nickname for Portsmouth, Pompey, was taken from this. Others still say it was a captured 74-gun French ship in 1793 called the Pompey with two E's. That's where the name comes from, but who can say which one is true? And there's also a Roman called Pompey, where some people say it comes from as well.
Pompey the Great.
So no one really knows where Pompey, this nickname, comes from. But it could be the ship, it could be this pillar, Pompey's pillar in Egypt, it could be Pompey the Roman guy, it could be all three. But by the turn of the 19th century, there was an industrial revolution in England. Sheffield had its steel, Yorkshire had its coal. Portsmouth had become the largest industrial site in the world. Having a workforce of 8,000 and an annual budget of 70,000 quid, they were making pulley blocks for the rigging on the Navy's ships. In 1808 alone, the mills making these produced 130,000 blocks. Yes, it was the Napoleonic times that we talked about in the first pod, and we're back to that again. And indeed, a lot of ships were needed to fend off the French and Spanish, who England had fallen out with it yet again. But there were more noble endeavours going on. Despite all this bickering, the Royal Navy's West Africa Squadron began operating out of Portsmouth in 1808, tasked with halting the slave trade, which they eventually did. I'm not going to delve into this subject because it always turns into some pointing the fingers, playing game. All I will say that it's over now, without mentioning that we are all still slaves to governments and corporations. I just did. Now,
so anti-establishment.
Darianism. What? So, ever since the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, even though that battle resulted in the loss of England's greatest naval commander, Admiral Horatio Nelson, the French were spooked. Those Brits had proved their gall and guts, and they were not to be underestimated. And so France's determination to invade these sacred isles waned. But in 1814, the Treaty of Paris was signed, with the Emperor of Russia and the King of Prussia coming over to Great Britain to celebrate its victory over Napoleon Bonaparte, a guy short on stature and who they tried to blow apart many times. He had a big chip on his shoulder as England proudly showed off its tremendous naval armaments, which had swept from the ocean the fleets of France and Spain and secured to Britain the domain of the sea. The French were troubled by these countries teaming up against them and rightly began to be worried about invasion. Now, Napoleon had been involved with these battles before a bit, but he let them down, so the French had exiled him, but they decided to get him back again. That fearsome man, Napoleon Bonaparte, by the end, he said, no, I swear a life of peace, no more fighting. They said, here's some money. He went, all right then. So he was called again to battle against England's mighty new guy, Wellington, in the Battle of Waterloo. Upon Napoleon's return to power in March of 1815, which began the 100 Days' War, he got stuck into invading the nearby countries who had teamed up and formed the 7th Coalition before they could invade him. So there was this big worry that he's going to come and take over France, which was probably, founded. So he decided to invade first. So the leader of the UK bit of this coalition was led by the Duke of Wellington, and a mighty game of chess was played out over land. Napoleon planned to separate these forces and wipe them out, splitting his troops up and attacking each one. Many battles followed, culminating in the Battle of Waterloo, which is now where Belgium is, on a Sunday, the 18th of June, 1815 to be precise. Oh, indeed, it was a sight to behold, if I could have beholden it before my eyes. According to Wellington himself, it was the nearest run thing you ever saw in your life. Waterloo cost Wellington around 17,000 dead or wounded. Napoleon's losses, though, were 24 to 26,000 dead or wounded. General Antoine Henry, Baron Jomini, one of the leading military writers on the Napoleonic art of war, had a number of theories to explain Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo. In my opinion, 4 principal causes led to this disaster. The first, and most influential, was the arrival, skillfully combined, of Blücher and the false movement that favoured this arrival. The second was the admirable firmness of the British infantry, joined to the sang-froid and aplomb of its chiefs. The third was the horrible weather that had softened the ground and rendered the offensive movements so toilsome, and retarded till 1 o'clock the attack that should have been made in the morning. The fourth was the inconceivable formation of the first corps, in masses very much too deep for the first grand attack. Did that make sense? I don't understand.
I don't think you got a single word pronounced correctly there. But
corpse. Upon his loss, Napoleon abdicated 4 days later, and the coalition forces entered Paris on the 7th of July, ending the First French Empire, signing the Treaty of Paris, which resulted in peace between France and its neighbours, which had lasted to this day. Although not without a good bit of good-natured animosity between the Brits, who call the French frogs, and the French, who call us Brits roast beef.
They do.
That's because we go over there and with our pale skin, and the sun's a bit nicer, and it makes us turn lobster colour, or roast beef colour.
It's nothing to do with the fact that they eat frog's legs and we eat roast beef.
No.
Okay.
Well, the Frenchman told me that. It comes from when we look sunburned when we were on holiday. Like roast beef before it's when it's medium rare, maybe.
I think he was pulling your frog's leg.
Anyway, during the 20th century, a bigger battle was brewing, which would rope in a lot of the world. But for now, all was at peace. In April 1811, the Portsea Island Company constructed the first piped water supply to upper and middle class homes. It supplied water to about 4,500 of Portsmouth's 14,000 houses, generating an income of £65,000. £5,000 a year. HMS Victory's active career ended in 1812 when she was moored in Portsmouth Harbour and used as a depot ship. The town of Gosport contributed £75 a year to the ship's maintenance. That's not much, is it? In 1818, John Pounds, you heard of him?
I have, yeah.
He owns a lot of Portsmouth.
I actually hold a meeting every 6 weeks or so, and I use the John Pounds Centre as a venue.
He's been around a bit. He's still got loads of land.
There's a John Pounds church in Old Portsmouth.
Yeah. He had a few quid, didn't he, John Pounds?
He looked after the poor kids, you know.
Oh, did he?
Fed the kids, yeah.
Oh, so he wasn't just
and
like
founded
Henry.
a school for the kids.
John Pounds. If you're anyone who's related to John Pounds,
Great
good
man.
on you. Keep his good name intact, won't you? Don't be a Henry. In 1818, John Pounds began teaching working class children, as you said, in the country's first ragged school. The Portsea Improvement Commissioners installed gas street lighting throughout Portsmouth in 1820, followed by Old Portsmouth 3 years later. During the 19th century, Portsmouth expanded across Portsea Island. Buckland was merged into the town by the 1860s, and Fratton and Stamshaw were incorporated by the next decade. Between 1865 and 1870, the council built sewers after more than 800 people died in a cholera epidemic. According to a bylaw, any house within 100 feet of a sewer had to be connected to it. By 1871, the population had risen to 100,000 people, and the national census listed Portsmouth's population as 113,569. A working class suburb was constructed in the 1870s, when about 1,820 houses were built, and it became Somers Town. Despite public health improvements, 514 people died in the 1872 smallpox epidemic. On the 21st of December of that year, the Challenger expedition embarked on a 68,890 nautical mile circumnavigation of the globe for scientific research. So in all this time, things were booming. The British Empire was at its height of power, covering a quarter of Earth's total land area and 458 million people at the turn of the 20th century. Portsmouth was considered the world's greatest naval port. In 1900, Portsmouth Dockyard employed 8,000 people, a figure which increased to 23,000 during the First World War, which we're going to get to. The whole of Portsea Island came united under the control of Portsmouth Borough Council in 1904. Bet you didn't know that.
I didn't know.
But
I'm interested to know, and we may not get onto it yet, when does the Portsmouth Corporation get involved? There is a Portsmouth Corporation, isn't there, that runs a lot of the city. And
well, you know, there used to be a Portsmouth TV station.
Did there?
Portsmouth TV, yeah.
Ah, I do remember that, yeah.
And Patrick Moore was interviewed on it.
Yeah.
Who's another...
Selsey, that's where he lived.
Yeah.
Just down the coast.
That's right. So we might touch on that in another pod about...
famous astronomer.
Yeah, TV and film of Portsmouth.
And he actually did a lot of work on the moon landings as well.
That's right.
Helping NASA to develop or decide on the correct site for the moon landing.
Anyway, let's get back to 1906, because the HMS Dreadnought was launched from Portsmouth Dockyard. Have you heard of the Dreadnought? This ship actually revolutionised naval warfare and began an arms race with Germany.
Bad move.
The ship's entry into service in 1906 represented such an advance in naval technology that her name came to be associated with an entire generation of battleships. War was right around the corner though. The First World War lasted from 28th of July 1914 to November 1918, and it had a profound effect on virtually every aspect of British life.
And if you want to know more about what life was like for the fellas in the trenches, best thing you can do is watch Blackadder.
Oh yeah, Blackadder goes 4. Yeah.
Series 4.
Yeah.
Which is a comedy show, if you don't know.
But it had a lot of poignancy, especially that last episode. It was,
very much so.
Yeah, it was a great show.
Excellent.
But the casualties in that war were actually 9 million military dead and 23 million were wounded, which is crazy. Since 1867, there had been growing hostility between the so-called Great Powers, that was Italy, France, Germany, the British Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russia. Armies were growing and weaponry was becoming greatly more powerful. There was rising nationalism, and transportation had reached a new level of sophistication with the rise of the aircraft, though in World War I they were mainly used for reconnaissance. Anyway, these factions were at each other's throats, and only a spark was needed to push the divided countries into all-out war. And that spark came, unfortunately, in July 1914 with the assassination of Frederick, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, along with his wife, by a Siberian. This caused uproar.
Was that Franz Ferdinand?
Yes, exactly. I was waiting for you to say that. Everyone was blaming each other. Who killed this guy? Who killed Franz?
The Archduke of Austro-Hungary.
Yeah, but the assassination was traced to a Serbian extremist group that wanted to increase Serbian power in the Balkans by breaking up the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It also did a lot more than that. But first of all, the Austro-Hungarian Empire attacked Serbia when they realised it was them. And Germany, who at this time especially resented Britain's navy because of the Dreadnought and stuff, guaranteed navy guaranteed Britain great economic power. Germany was supporting Austria-Hungary, while Russia sided with its traditional ally Serbia. So all these things were getting a bit out of hand, weren't they? When Russia mobilised its military forces at the end of July, Germany sought to avoid a two-front war by a quick invasion of France, Russia's main ally. German troops moved on France by invading Belgium, a country that had been neutral for nearly 100 years, on 3rd of August, I guess since the Battle of Waterloo. Britain, fulfilling its obligations to support Belgian neutrality, declared war the next day, and that was it.
That must have been around the time, or in that battle, that the first British tank regiments were deployed.
That's right. Yeah, the first tanks from...
My grandfather was in one of the first tank regiments.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So
platoons, I think, is the right word.
Well, great grandfather.
Battalions.
Would have been great grandfather, wouldn't it?
No, my grandfather.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because my grandfather was in the Second World War. Anyway, he must have had
an age difference though.
There must have been.
Well, my father was quite old when he had us.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Sister and brother.
Oh, okay. I think mine were like. But anyway, this all kicked off. It led to the famous trench warfare battles, mustard gas, and all that nasty stuff. What happened in Portsmouth during this time? That's what we got to focus on. But the city and people of Portsmouth, obviously greatly affected by the First World War. Many citizens joined the armed forces and served in the UK or abroad. Others served in jobs that supported the war effort in some other way. Over 6,000 Portsmouth men died in the conflict. Nearly 1 in 10 of the men of military age living in the city. World War I ended at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November 1918. This became known as Armistice Day, the day Germany signed an armistice or agreement for peace, which caused the fighting to stop. People in Britain, France and the countries that supported them celebrated. And we had a short-lived time of peace again. Portsmouth boundaries were extended into the mainland of Great Britain between 1920 and 1932 and incorporated Portsgrove, Wimmering, Cussin, Drayton and Farlington into Portsmouth. Portsmouth was granted city status in 1926 after a long campaign by the Borough Council. The application was made on the grounds that it was the first naval port of the kingdom. In 1929, the City Council added the motto, "Heaven's Light Our Guide," to the medieval coat of arms, symbol of Portsmouth.
So did that have the star and crescent in it?
Yeah, I think it did then.
It did, okay.
Yeah. Except for the celestial objects in the arms, so it didn't. The motto was that of the Star of India and referred to the troop ships bound for British India, which left from the port. The crest and supporters are based on those of the Royal Arms, but altered to show the city's maritime connections. The lion and the unicorn have fishtails, and a naval crown and a representation of the Tudor defensive boom, which stretched across Portsmouth Harbour, are around the unicorn. Maybe I'll add the picture so you can see it on the YouTube version of this video later.
Yeah, take a look at our YouTube channel of the same name, Pompey Eclectic.
Yeah. But then, war started once more with the rise of Hitler and the Nazis, which triggered World War II. War being declared in 1939. Now, I don't know about you, but Hitler, he was a painter. You can check out his artwork. He did watercolours. You know, he was a good painter. And then I think someone made fun of his paintings or something, so he decided to be a dictator or something instead.
I did actually watch a documentary about Hitler the other day on Netflix.
Yeah.
It was very, very interesting.
He didn't like the Jews, did he?
He didn't much like them.
I think that maybe they were the people that made fun of his paintings.
I think he did have some difficulties in childhood from that area, but there were also 2 or 3 very close personal deaths in his family. One from suicide as well, which really screwed him up a bit. I think he was again a figurehead, but there were people behind him, obviously. But the Third Reich and Hitler, sorry, but yeah, he was a bit of a nutter, to be honest. But during this time, when war was declared in 1939, my little hometown of Waterlooville, where I grew up, obviously much later, it was basking in the summer sunshine. Peace was everywhere. It was a little village at this time. It still had the cinema, the Cussin, and Melton House with its huge domed conservatory that stood where the precinct had been developed. And now this peace was shattered when the 22nd Field Regiment came into the area after evacuating Dunkirk in France, fleeing from Germany's rampage through Europe. 1 battalion was in Waterlooville and 1 was in Denmead. Canteens were opened and the queue for beans on toast and cheese sandwiches sometimes extended downstairs and along the road. The first contingent ended up staying so long they became part of the village and got friendly with the local girls. They liked soldiers, you know, men in uniform, later settling down in the town. So a lot of my predecessors in Waterlooville came from all over and settled there when they saw the lovely Waterlooville lasses. During the Second World War, there were lots of American soldiers who joined towards the end of the war.
Later, they all
saw English dallied with the English girls and
dallied with the damsels.
They used to bring them things that they couldn't get, like stockings, and what else did they bring? I don't know, chewing gum, wasn't it? Yeah, chewing gum and stockings.
Wow. They developed those nasty habits.
Yeah.
Anyway, during this period of World War II, when Britain stood all alone, the only country unoccupied by Nazi forces in Western Europe, it's a scary time. The city, particularly the port, was bombed extensively by the Luftwaffe in the Portsmouth Blitz. Portsmouth experienced 67 air raids between July 1940 and May 1944, which destroyed 6,625 houses and severely damaged 6,549.
There were a lot of bombed out houses, weren't there? And we mentioned this in the previous episode, that Paulsgrove, a lot of Paulsgrove was actually built to rehouse people who were bombed out of their homes in Portsea Island.
Bombed out and bummed out.
So those houses were prefabricated houses that were designed to only stand for 10 years. But they still stand today.
Wow.
80 years later.
That's pretty amazing. They don't build them like they used to. Even the hastily built ones survive better than some modern buildings with all their cracks.
And what the Luftwaffe were trying to do was to bomb the ships in the dockyard that were being refitted.
Yeah.
Before they could make their way back out to the channel.
Yeah. But this was these air raids. They caused 930 deaths and wounded almost 3,000 people, as well as all the buildings and things they were trying to destroy. Many in the dockyard and military establishments obviously were killed. On the night of the city's heaviest raid, which was the 10th of January 1941, the Luftwaffe dropped 140 tons of high explosive bombs, which killed 171 people and left 3,000 people homeless. Many of the city's houses were damaged, and areas of Lamport and Old Portsmouth destroyed. The future site of Gunwharf Quays was razed to the ground. The Guildhall was hit by an incendiary bomb, which burnt out the interior and destroyed its inner walls, although the civic plate was retrieved and unharmed from the vault under the front steps. During the night, at one of the biggest air raids of Portsmouth, people could see Portsdown Hill covered with firebombs. The gunfire was incessant, punctuated by the thud of distant bombs. A big pom-pom gun was installed at Crookhorn to try and fend off the enemy. The noise of it, people said, nearly lifted the roof off their homes. After the raid, Portsmouth Mayor Dennis Daly wrote for the Evening News, "We are bruised, but we are not daunted, and we are still as determined as ever to stand side by side with other cities who have felt the blast of the enemy, and we shall with them persevere with an unflagging spirit towards a conclusive and decisive victory." Portsmouth Harbour was a vital military embarkation point for the 6th of June 1944 D-Day landings. Southwark House, just north of the city, was the headquarters of the Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower. A V-1 flying bomb hit New Common Road on 15th of July. What's that? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
Just to let you know, Eisenhower was not a V-1 flying bomb.
Yeah. I'm just glad you were listening. I threw that in there to see.
I had been asleep, but I woke up then when you said D-Day.
Yeah, well, anyway, he used a Supreme Allied Commander. But soon the Allied forces were going to fight back with all this time. They were all alone, but it was all hush-hush, but various parts of Portsmouth became centres of what was known as Operation Overlord. This is when many big knobs came to the area around this time. Monty was sighted. You know him? Field Marshal Montgomery?
I do.
Was he the one on the poster?
No, that was Kitchener.
Oh, that's right.
But there is a statue of Montgomery down by the D-Day Museum.
Oh, yeah.
In Portsmouth. And I always remember my father told me that, because my father was a soldier in the British Army, and he was inspected by Montgomery once.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that was in Egypt.
Bloody hell.
So that was his sort of claim to fame.
Yeah. I was to be inspected by Field Marshal Montgomery. But he's actually staying at Suffolk House as well. Even the King, George VI, he had been spotted there as well, somewhere in Portsmouth, later confirmed as, because he had reviewed troops just before D-Day on the road near the church of St John at Rowlands Castle. And there's a plaque, a stone there that marks it. Yeah,
I know it.
George VI was here. But it wasn't known at this time. But there was a sense of something big coming.
And we did talk about this in the last podcast, didn't we?
Yeah.
About D-Day being planned from Southwark.
That's right.
And they all wandered down to the local pub. There's 2 pubs in Southwark High Street, and they wandered down to one of those and had a beer and a chat about the whole thing.
Do you know, I don't think it's good having a piss up when you're planning a retaliation. If you're a bit pissed, but it seemed to work anyway. Because one Sunday afternoon, just before D-Day, they all started. The peace was shattered by the arrival of tanks lorries, huge bulldozers, troops, also many troops, British, French, Polish, Czechs, all involved in the struggle for freedom. After the war, once the Nazis were defeated and 40 to 55 million lives were lost, peace came back to the world at large. In Portsmouth, much of the city's housing stock was damaged during the war. The wreckage was cleared in an attempt to improve housing quality after the war, before permanent accommodations could be built. Portsmouth City Council built prefabs for those who had lost their homes. More than 700 prefab houses were constructed between 1945 and 1947, some over bomb sites. The first permanent houses were built away from the city centre, in new developments such as Paulsgrove and Lee Park.
Exactly. Construction
Construction of council estates in Paulsgrove were completed in 1953. The first Lee Park housing estates were completed in 1949. Construction in the area continued until 1974. Builders still find occasionally unexploded bombs, such as on the site of the destroyed Hippodrome Theatre in 1984. Despite efforts by the City Council to build new housing, a 1955 survey indicated that 7,000 homes in Portsmouth were unfit for human habitation. A controversial decision was made to replace a section of the central city, including Lamport, Somerstown and Buckland, with council housing during the 60s and 70s. The success of the project and the quality of its housing are debatable.
And interestingly, my father always told a story of how he was working on the Queen Elizabeth in the dockyard on the night when the Luftwaffe tried to bomb it.
Wow.
And the siren sounded and they all scattered on the deck. And he was an apprentice, a young lad, and somebody said to him, "Here, quick, get in here." And he ushered him into a gun turret where he took shelter during the bombing raid.
Wow.
And he was in there and he counted the bombs as they came down, and I can't remember exactly how many he counted, but I think there were 5 bombs and he counted them, and 3 went off and 2 of them didn't explode.
Wow.
And they all landed in or near the water.
Wow.
And so he always maintained that there were these 2 unexploded bombs in the harbour.
Wow.
And years later, in fact only a few years ago now, they discovered these 2 bombs.
Wow.
In the harbour.
Wow.
Yeah, next to, well, not in the harbour, but in the
So
water
he
next
was
to the
right.
dockyard.
He wasn't making it up.
Yeah, that's right.
Damn.
But interestingly, after the all clear sounded, after this raid, he came out of this gun turret, and some fella saw him come out of the gun turret and said, "You weren't hiding in there, were you?" And he said, "Yeah." And the guy said, "Well, that's just got a wooden roof on it."
It wouldn't have done much good. Wouldn't have. Well, my mum's dad also was in the Second World War. He was in one of the bombing planes flying over Germany.
In Lancaster, probably.
Yeah, and he got shot down by one of the famous Luftwaffe.
The Red Baron.
Red Baron, yeah, and he was the only survivor of the plane. Now we're going more into that later because I think we're going to touch more on this.
Oh, this was First World War then?
Second World War.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're going to touch more on that in a future pod because it's quite interesting. Both our families were quite involved in the war and what they went through. But anyway, the war was over, World War II.
And you know what Churchill said after the
we will
war?
fight them on the... Oh no,
after the war he said, "We may allow ourselves a brief period of jubilation." Something along those lines.
He's like, have a few drinks, but take it easy.
So everyone went, "Victory dance," and then carried on.
Yeah, because World War III might have happened, because there wasn't much between World War I and II, was there? And touch wood, it hasn't happened so far. Anyway, Portsmouth was really affected from the war, but also by the decline of the British Empire in the second half of the 20th century. Shipbuilding jobs fell from 46% of the workforce in 1951 to 14% in 1966, drastically reducing manpower in the dockyard. The City Council attempted to create new work. An industrial estate was built in Fratton in 1948, where we are.
Yeah, I wonder which industrial estate.
And others were built at Paulsgrove and Farlington during the 50s and 60s. You have to look into that.
Well, I know the industrial estate in Paulsgrove and Farlington, but the Fratton one, I don't know where that would have been.
Wow, traditional Industries such as brewing and corset manufacturing disappeared during this time. Electrical engineering became a major employer. Despite the cutbacks in traditional sectors, Portsmouth remained attractive to industry. Zurich Insurance Group moved their UK headquarters to the city in 1968, and IBM, who my dad worked for, relocated their European headquarters in 1979. Portsmouth population had dropped from about 200,000 to 177,142. About by the end of the 1960s.
I wonder how they come out with that figure.
Defence Secretary John Knott decided that in the early 1980s that of the 4 home dockyards, Portsmouth and Chatham would be closed. The City Council won a concession, however, and the dockyard was downgraded instead to a naval base. Okay, so there were some more scuffles in the Falkland Islands in 1982, in the South Atlantic, and the South Sandwich Islands, sandwiches again. The British government response was to dispatch a naval task force, and the aircraft carriers HMS Hermes and HMS Invincible sailed from Portsmouth on the 5th of April 1982. The successful outcome of the war reaffirmed British Portsmouth's significance as a naval port and its importance to the defence of British interests. And in January 1997, Her Majesty's yacht Britannica embarked from the city on her final voyage to oversee the handling.
Britannia, I think, wasn't it?
Britannia, sorry.
Yeah.
Of Hong Kong. Oh yeah, we lost Hong Kong then as well. So we were losing everything, giving it all back, which is quite
being
nice.
forced by many to pay reparations.
Yes, so we've got to say sorry everyone, sorry for whatever.
A sincere apology there from Pompey Eclectic.
She was decommissioned, the Britannia, on the 11th of December of that year at Portsmouth Naval Base in the presence of Elizabeth II, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the 12 senior members of the royal family. So, nearly there now, but we're almost up to modern day. But the redevelopment of the naval shore establishment HMS Vernon began in 2001 as a complex of retail outlets, clubs, pubs, and a shopping centre known as Gun Wharf Quays. Construction of the 552-foot tall Spinnaker Tower, sponsored by the National Lottery, began in Gun Wharf Quays in 2003. The Tricorn Centre, called the ugliest building in the UK, like most other places.
It won an award early on for architecture, and then
I love it. I've got stories about that.
10 or 15 years, it had been designated as the most hated building in the country.
We might get into that in our top 10 if we've got time.
Yes, because Phil's just written a book actually, which mentions the Tricorn.
Yeah, well, Tricorn was a big part of my growing up in a way, and we've touched on that as well at some point. But that was demolished in 2004 after years of debate over the expense of demolition and whether it was worth preserving as an example of 1960s brutalist architecture.
But really, what was it there for? I mean, it was really just a big car park, wasn't it?
No,
With a few
it
shops
was amazing. It was designed by a guy called Owen Luder as part of a project to revitalise Portsmouth in the 1960s.
It was just a multi-storey car park.
No, it consisted of a shopping centre, a market, nightclubs, and a multi-storey car park.
The market was in Charlotte Street.
Nightclub as well.
That was in a separate road.
But it was part of it. Yeah. It sort of bled into it and out of it. It consisted of a shopping centre as well, which is amazing. And the shops in there, the comic shop at the top, which I used to go to. Anyway, enough of that. We might have to scrub it off our top 10 list. Portsmouth celebrated the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Trafalgar in 2005, with Queen Elizabeth II present at a fleet review and a mock battle. The naval base is home to 2/3 of Britain's surface fleet. The city also hosted international commemorations, the 50th, 75th and 80th anniversaries of the D-Day landings. These were attended by international leaders and remaining veterans. Today, England's future is not one of positivity, I'm sad to say, and it can be seen especially in the once flourishing and bustling high streets, now replaced with many vacant storefronts and even more vacant looking people wandering the streets.
This must be common to all Western cities now. Do you think?
Not just in
with the bricks to clicks transition.
It's that's a nice phrase. I like that. Did you create that?
No.
People's reliance on home delivery seems to have suffocated and vaped the livelihoods of the shop fronts. The future is looking bleak indeed, unless your business is in haircutting, kebabs, sausage rolls, or those smoke emitting devices.
Or nail bars.
Well, oh yeah.
I mean, now if you walk around Portsmouth shopping areas, it's basically nail bars and barber shops.
Yeah,
isn't it? Mostly.
It's good for the Vietnamese who want to bring their nail business over. I have to tell my wife. But those smoke-emitting devices that are originally supposed to be a stepping stone to get people off the fags now seem to be a gateway towards starting it for young teens. If you look at the vapes, they look like coloured candy in the shops, don't they?
But the UK government has introduced a law recently so that
they're trying to ban it.
The children now will never be able to legally buy cigarettes, will they? Because they're raising the age of eligibility to buy cigarettes every year.
The height of the shelf. But where do we go from here, Simon?
So far away.
If only. Well, I'm going to go so far away in a little bit, back to Vietnam.
You are.
Is this the end? Are the Dark Ages truly returning? Just hope there isn't a Henry IX.
Hope springs eternal.
And that brings to the end my fabulous trilogy of the origins of Portsmouth, from dinosaurs to today.
Let's just add one final note that Portsmouth City Council put quite a lot of money into marketing over the last few decades to transition Portsmouth into being known as the world-class waterfront city. So that's really what it's known as today, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gun Wharf, factory outlet shopping.
Yeah, I mean, you can go
seaside, very long beach, and
if you just
historic dockyard.
If you go to Gun Wharf, it's buzzing. And it looks amazing. It's
very busy down there.
Yeah. So if you ignore poor old commercial roads now, like full of crackheads and crumbling shop fronts.
Used to be the town centre, didn't it? Really commercial road.
When I was there back in the day, it was amazing place.
If anything, now Southsea Palmerston Road is really probably the centre of activity in the town.
So there are some positives. It's not all bleak. I mean,
it's just a changing scenery, a changing landscape.
People have got to adjust with the changes, I guess, and find new ways to survive in this new landscape. Because, like I say, online shopping is where it's all at these days. So it's hard to compete if you've got a shop front. No one wants to go out and walk around and meet. God, for sake, say hi to someone else, see other people.
Heaven forbid having to talk to someone politely.
Even the pubs are struggling. But maybe it will get better. Let's hope. I'm trying to be positive, and things will get better.
We should be positive because we could have listeners here from all over the world.
Yeah, and
they might be thinking, I want to go on holiday in England.
Going there now.
And now they listen to you going on about how much room to go on. No, it's a great city. Please come and say hello to us.
Yes, you too. And you drop us a line if you're coming down. We can meet you for
or even come round to the studio and we'll make you a coffee.
Yeah. Bye.
This is Neon City.